Well, welcome everybody. Welcome. It's lovely to have you join us for our first Zoom of the second year. Uh, the team, Joanne, myself, Ron, Wade, uh, and Elaine, we are delighted to be together. We were on at 9 o'clock already, and just saying how much we miss each other, and then how much we are missing the interaction with you because you feel like our community. We've been on this journey now for a year, and as this journey continues to unfold, we feel connected to you in your own journey, and so much has water has gone under the bridge for all of us since the experience of the SDGT has began. Uh, we're not the same people who began the program, and so we find our way together. I would invite us to start. We'll take some silence, and in this silence, the first invitation is simply to enjoy who's on the screen. Let yourself visually travel from little box to little box, seeing each of us in our environment, seeing each of us and reacquainting name and face and letting yourself remember something of your own experience. So, honoring our being together will take about 2 to 3 minutes. Uh, First, enjoy the screen and then drop into your own experience of being physically present and then expanding outward to also sense your spiritual presence. So, first, the experiencing the presence of us gathered here, your own sense of your physical presence, and then your awareness that we are spiritual beings together. So, allowing ourselves to move into that meditation time. And preparing to bring the meditation to a close, aware now of all of us present, our own sense of ourselves as physical and spiritual being here, blessing what we shall experience together. May it all be for our good and the good of all being. Thanks, friends. Uh, Again, what a pleasure to have all of us gathered and to see each other and to connect in this time with the the whole of us as we are on this spiritual path that has no beginning and no end. So here we find ourselves today. I want to begin with this idea of being. And I want to offer it as something that is always in evolution. So every moment I am becoming. So, what's the most important, or in process understanding? So, this is moving into the realm of process theology. The really real is that which is always in the moment of becoming, always in the creating. Everything else is past or an imagination for the future. I mean, that's what the Buddhist would say, right? We are in the present moment, and the present moment, the next moment, the next moment. So the really real is what we are becoming, not what we already are. So just to hold that. And the other word that I want to introduce is enthusiasm. And some of you may know this, but the word enthusiasm is really from en, which means in or of, and theos, which is the word for God. So to be enthused is to be godded, or to have the gods visit you. And it's different than being excited. Excited is like the weather, like it's like sad. I'm excited, I'm happy, I'm sad. But to be enthused means that a spirit has has us, or has inspirited us. So we're inspirited by a kind of energy and a kind of aliveness. So I want to offer that as a kind of backdrop for understanding what we're going to do today, which is talk to each other about people or acquaintances who have spiritually guided us and mattered to us. I'm going to keep playing with this idea of becoming stuff, the physical experience, and the spiritual reality that prompts that, or entheoses it, or enthuses it. So just to hold those words in mind, and we're going to play with this. I also want to say that I'm thrilled that it's just us'ns for this session, because we can be really informal now, and to also welcome, as we would do if we were together in the big room, that if something arises for you, raise your hand so that we are already beginning to engage as we are accustomed to engaging when we gather in the big circle here at the Christine Center in person. So to be together in that way, that can really matter for us. So I wanted to take a little time now to invite each of the team to say why they are enthused to be here. So, and I told them that it should be pithy and short, so that we can stay on schedule. So, friends, please jump on in. Why are you here, Joanne?
I'm here because I love the learning from everybody that is gathered. Even I could already be happy being done for the day just with the definition of the word enthused and thinking about how that moves through my life. Boom.
Thank you. Thanks, Joanne. Ron, how about you?
I know I'm going to receive a lot of ahas today, a lot of energy, that an awareness that's going to deepen me. And to be able to share that with this community makes it even more of value, of kindred souls. So I'm enthused.
Thank you. Wade, how about you?
I'm enthused with the sense of continuation, the unfolding of my life to this point, the unfolding of this group, and I'm just feel a lot of enthusiasm for that continuation of that unfolding of my life in these good ways.
Thanks, Wade. And Elaine, welcome back from Greece. How about you?
Thanks, Gabe. I had to look up the word pithy.
I did too.
So for one, I'm looking forward to all the new words I'm going to be learning from Gabe and others today. But I'm most enthused about the idea that in calling forth the inspiration of these mystics, that they are truly with us today. And that just feels like comforting and very energizing to me.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Elaine. I'm enthused because with you, I can be enthusiastic. When I'm home with my home community, I always get this, Gabe, there you go again. And and I'm told I'm too enthusiastic. Really, really delighted that I can be with you in that way, and want to offer really to heighten our awareness that as we talk about spiritual things, our bodies are engaged and also shifting. We have sensory experience. I want to do a really quick little introduction, which is kind of a review of where we've been. I'm going to show some slides, and then we'll go into the work with various people who have influenced our lives. So let me do a little screen share. Okay. And so I want to focus on these phrases. We are because they are. When I talk about Hildegard of Bingen today, what you are experiencing is because I experienced her. That's the reality of it. Had I not encountered her, I would be completely different. The other reality is that we are, so however you name the we, so as you can say this, we are because you are, meaning all of you. So the five of us on the team are who we are today because you showed up in the spiritual deepening program. I want to really highlight the interdependence of what you offer that pulls forward what we are. And what we offer, an invitation for you to allow a new becoming as well. So it's really very significant that this is not just a spiritual activity, this manifests in a physical reality. And so I'm going to keep asking the question as you hear this stuff, where in your body do you feel it? Where do you sense an aliveness? How did you notice you received the telling of the story? Just to pay attention and actually not just take notes if you're note taking, notes about content, but notes about what your experience is like. See, that's going to be the real push here. What is your experience? Now, I want to go back to 40 years ago when I first met Hildegard of Bingen, and it was at the same time I met Brian Swim, Matthew Fox, and Thomas Berry. We were all in the room together, and I thought that you'd like to see a picture of what I looked like then, and really,
Oh,
here I am now. Uh, and of course, the way that I found Hildegard. Let me back up because I'm not getting the slides I want. Okay, here we go. These are the slides I want. Okay, all right. So the first thing I want to say is that um, when we did the initial Zoom meeting in year one, the whole point of that was to talk about how spirit is enmeshed in creation and that there would be no spirituality in us if spirit wasn't first part of earth. And that Teilhard de Chardin says it this way: everything, every atom has both a psychic or a spiritual dimension and a physical dimension. And then even if we were to take a more traditional religious view and say God created, then we are from God. Everything is from God with God's imprint and spirit. So to just really move into what Thomas Berry keeps saying over and over again. If there is no spirituality in earth, then there's no spirituality in us. This is the indigenous insight that we're trying to recover. So I want to just use that as our very first impulse. And then we've been working all year on this sensory upgrade to sense the physical, the emotional, the intellectual, and to sense spirit and soul. So as you are experiencing us speaking today about our mystic that we've brought along, to really try to sense in these four ways, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and theost, the sensing of the spirit soul capacity. All right, so again, let me add now from my perspective, I, in this sensory upgrade, understand my body as bigger than the me I psychologically know. Okay? And that spiritual work is breaking open the illusory shell of the me. Now, pushing that a little bit, the impulse to evolve then, even right now, this impulse for me to get these slides right is bigger than my own impulse. There's the intelligence of my body, and there's the intelligence of the collective that is pushing me to evolve. And so we finally got to this place. Now, helping each other to evolve is to be fully present in a mattering way, that is to say, embodied. And that's why we're doing the incarnation inspiration that we're doing today. The inspiration we have received now matters to us. We have a relationship with the saints, holy ones, good people. Either we've met them personally or encountered them in our study, encountered them spiritually, and that changes what then others experience of us. That's how it happens. We then make available the change that these mystics have offered to us. And so that's how it's important that we're together in a group, because as we have the capacity to matter to each other, we keep pulling forward new and fresh evolutions. So now, in a way, I want to say, so not just Hildegard is my mystic, but all of you in my interaction with you pull forward something fresh spiritually in me that I experience. So we continue to matter to each other, and this is why we're hungry for community, for a sangha, for a group of people who are interested in the same kind of spiritual journey. So I want to say again, we are because they are, and we are because you are. And that's the reality of how we evolve now in this opportunity of sharing. Is there anything anybody wants to say to this before we go to hear about the individual mystics? If you can use as a mantra, I am because you are. I am because you are. You are because I am. Keep that in the back of your mind as you're hearing what we have to offer. Anything anybody want to comment on? Yes, please, Maureen. Oh, you have your hand up. So that's how you somehow you're uh
I'm a mover. I move a lot, so ignore that.
that's why it happened. Yeah. Or yes, Lisa.
Since you started talking about the mystics and I am because they are, and I just lost track of the saying, but I have been sensing uh, it feels like fullness in my head and in my face, and I feel like there's something that's coming to me, and I don't know who is trying to reach me, if it's someone who is here in this group, or if it's someone in my life, in my past, in my ancestry. But I'm having a very, very physical sensation when you brought up the topic of people who went before us. And I
Yes.
will be paying very close attention to see if that is identified as we continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And during the lunchtime, we're going to offer a little practice that you can actually try and see who shows up. So we'll see how that goes. Well, yes, Dawn, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't not even find the place to raise my hand anymore in the toolbar. I think Zoom has just evolved overnight. I just want to share two things. So, first of all, when we were all gathered initially and looking at each other, I had this profound feeling of everyone is a reflection
Mm.
of that greater unity. Everyone's a reflection of me, right? That idea that we all come from the same source and that from each person I can gather and glean more. And of course, I want to love each person because we're all together. We're all like that connection. I've never had an experience like that in Zoom before. And then secondly, Lisa, I can identify with the like that growing anticipation, excitement, um, um, and definitely that I am because you are. I'm looking forward to what's going to come next.
Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. I want to say, I made sure that I offered to you as I was speaking an enthused experience. I could have been also really flat. Do you see that? And I could have presented in a different way, and I could have held my paper up like this. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So that how I present matters. So let me say it this way. Participation is not optional. Mattering is not optional, but how we choose to matter is up to us. That's part of the learning of this second year, the embodied presence and its effect. And so to begin with enthused um, presence was my intention. And thank you for sensing that. And already as you are, so I'm looking at the screen and I'm noticing people nodding. I'm noticing smiling faces that already that is part of how we are here. Spencer.
So, in terms of what you just said, question comes up to me. You said in terms of, you chose to be enthused in presenting. I guess my question would be, what if that's not what we're feeling authentically at this moment?
Right. Enthused only works when it's authentic. It only works when it's authentic. There's a way in which, as we refine our capacity for sensing, we can sense when it's not integral. And what's asked of us is to be fully present with the integrity of who we are in the moment. See, and there is no way in a way, let me say, to say I chose, probably is too wishy-washy. I can't help but be enthused about Hildegard of Bingen. See, so I really can't speak of her and not be enthused. So, in a way, I shouldn't have said choice. That was a real good catch that you made in terms of how we are free. There is this larger field that is asking something of me when Hildegard of Bingen comes up. So I show up that way. And we gather here, let me say too, you were coming on, the sense of gathering because the field called you. It isn't just that you chose, you were called, you you didn't just make yourself come. You were actually called and invited, and there was an allurement or a pull to be here, stronger or weaker for us depending on the weather in our own lives, but the invitation to be here to which you responded. So I want to say, Earth is evolving us. So in a way, the idea of the mystics coming forward is the earth blossoming the mystics in our experience this morning. Cindy.
Ah, I appreciate Spencer's question and your response to it just right now, because I've been pondering, so what's the difference between showing up enthused and showing up excited? And how would a person make that differentiation? In your response, just answer that beautifully. Enthused, you can't help it. I can fake excitement. And when I was working, there were many times that I had to, but I could never fake enthused. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, would it be okay with your permission if we moved on now to the various mystics? I know that Joanne is very excited to share. So, please, enthused.
All right. I am. I was going to say that. And I'm enthused to do a PowerPoint too. Um, and hopefully see that this works. All right. And so excited. All right. I hope you're seeing a screen. Oh, good. Okay. I feel like everything I've wanted to say has changed with Gabe's opening to this. So enthusiasm can make me feel very scattered and excited at the same time. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, I am talking about Jalud and Rumi, and Gabe has discussed definitions of someone continuing to kind of embody us and how that works in ways that matter. And for me, it's Rumi that continues to inspire, comfort, and challenge all the way from the 13th century. Can you that's like better than going viral, right? It's a really long time to have continued to inspire people. Um, and as I reflected on what I wanted to share this morning, it even occurred to me that it isn't a stretch to say Rumi is still like just part of my community. I feel like I invoke him so often when beginning and ending most anything I teach. And that even happened this morning as Gabe started talking about what enthused means and what it means to have the spirit in us. Because immediately I started thinking about things Rumi says. Like last night, I was reading these lines I loved, and it reminded me of this whole creativity thing that Gabe talked about a little bit this morning. Rumi says, start a huge, foolish project like Noah. It makes absolutely no difference what people think of you. I just love that. And it's already, it seemed like it fit with what we were talking about so much. All right. Now, so Rumi, speaking of enthusiasm, Rumi was known as a whirling dervish. And this was his active meditation. I have to move on because that makes me dizzy to even watch it. I, this was way he connected with God, the way he connected with his own creativity, the way I guess he became enthused. He could be whirling and start, spouting poetry even, which is a skill I don't have. But it's very exciting the way he accessed who he was. Um, okay, so a little bit about who was Rumi. So Rumi was 13th century Persian poet, Islamic mystic, Sufi, and spiritual teacher. He lived in present-day Afghanistan and Turkey. He was kind of pretty much a regular guy, for the time, and as much of a regular guy as you can be when your dad is a pretty great spiritual teacher. And something I found interesting, though, is people saw something in him even when he was a little kid. There was this other Sufi poet, Attar, who said of him when he saw him following his dad, here comes a sea followed by an ocean. I thought, wow, what a thing for someone to notice that this is going to be someone who is big, who is all encompassing. So the big change came when Rumi met Shams, who became his best friend in just an all-encompassing way. Um, and Shams opened him to new worlds of friendship and spirituality through conversation, through letting go of a lot of norms. They really just moved forward in whatever way was best for them through learning to whirl and through grief. Grief was a really big part of how Rumi became who we think of Rumi. Shams is either murdered or leaves on his own, and Rumi is terribly aggrieved for several years until Rumi figures out that his love for his friend is really everywhere and in everything. And that's what led to the big change that led Rumi to produce most of his writing. So there's a lot of themes like love, transformation, divine longing, mystery, and the way we are all one, the interconnectedness. Anything you read about Rumi is going to talk about interconnectedness. And that's one of the many things that means a lot to me personally about Rumi is everything I read about him and the poetry I read connects to the Buddhism I'm learning, connects to the Turgar programs that I do, connects to everything Richard Rohr says. Um, and I'll talk about that more in the next few minutes because this echoing is what I really like about him. And another example of that is when we gathered in May, we talked about a lot about the soul and what is the soul? Is the soul in us or are we in the soul? And Rumi talks about how we are not a drop in the ocean. We are the entire ocean in a drop. And for me, that resonates so much with our discussions about soul. So, there again, it's this person from the 13th century who is alive and present for me and enthusing me even now. I think that quote talks about the whole universe being in us. And it emphasizes that whole interconnectedness all of us talk about so much that that is the I am because you are. We are all interconnected. And we all have the potential for self-realization, for waking up within us. I think we're all part of another reality. So, or all part of one reality. So, I want to share my favorite poem that really becomes my incarnation inspiration. I, I thought about, is this an aha for me that Rumi's been important to me? And I don't think it is. It's just something Rumi and his poetry has been with me for so many years, I can't say. Um, it just feels like he weaves throughout me. So I want to read a poem I'm guessing many of you are familiar with. This being human is a guest house. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I use this poem all the time, and I didn't think about it until we were asked to explore our relationship to a mystic. But I would say that this poem is the gift I give myself at the start of a retreat, as it's really an acceptance of whatever might happen in our retreat time. And it's also the gift I offer to those joining me as an invitation to experience all that is to come. So, this whole thing about welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house of its furniture, you don't know what's coming next, right? Just like Rumi didn't know what was coming with Shams. Um, so this is This is my relationship to Rumi. It's not the aha, but it's just this quiet weaving of my desire to always be curious about whatever is coming and to accept, not guard against change. I want to say just a couple of other things about Rumi's values and where I think he really meshes with me in some beautiful sayings. So, just a couple of themes that are relevant. Love, with life as short as a half taken breath. Don't plant anything but love. Or inner awakening. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? And stopped acting small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Love that. Healing from grief. Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. And the fun thing about now, the last few months, having read more about Rumi and his life, you really learn this is a guy who grieved a lot. And so he knows what he's talking about. It's just not pretty words. An acceptance of imperfection. Try to be like the moon in the sky, always full, never perfect. All right. So Rumi weaves through my day. Values resonate from other tour guide programming. I love Richard Rohr's line about if it's true all the time and everywhere. And when I was first learning about meditation in a program, I couldn't believe how many books just really had different words for the same themes, right? And now as I see that in Rumi, this is um, this is a whole lot of years of the same things, that same interconnectedness being true and being important. So Rumi keeps calling to me with ongoing discovery. Even last night, reading some more of his poetry, it's like, oh, I want to share that. I want to share that. Oh, it's 10 minutes. Just stop. Um, and so there's new poems, new lines, new connections all the time. It doesn't get old or feel old. And all right, coming to an end, my Incarnation inspiration is another well-known poem of Rumi's. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And that's another, these lines go through my mind a lot. I think maybe especially if I'm kind of upset with someone or something, to think about there is a field, I'll meet you there. And last but not least, we were asked to end with a pithy statement. And I'm going back to something I shared before. With life as short as a half taken breath, don't plant anything but love. The end.
Thank you, Joanne. Lovely, lovely. I am sitting here vibrating because I'm so familiar with the quotes you shared. These are quotes I've seen before, heard before, and to hear you say them and to now hear them in your voice. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to respond to Joanne?
I would love to, if I may. Joanne, like I've been reading your book, This Is How We Leave. And as you were speaking about Rumi, I'm just seeing how very much you are an embodiment
Oh,
of Rumi, especially in the poems that you highlighted. This book is about staying when you really want to leave, right? But it is that guest house, you know, it's right there. It's in the words that you share, and even the way in which this book of yours particularly shows how present you are to your life and the people in your life and each moment, and it's beautiful and tender and vulnerable and funny all at the same time. And so I just wanted to lift that up and invite, if you have a response with regards to how you see Rumi may have affected your writing. and your life as an author.
Wow, thank you for that, Elaine. And again, I think when I hear you ask that, I think, it, has it? Did that happen? It, so I would guess that the answer is really that poem about Guest House. You is being willing, whether it's because you've read Rumi or you've taken some meditation classes or um, sat quietly in any church for quite a while, that you can get quiet with things and let them come instead of continuing. A lot of it is instead of continuing to run away. You know, Rumi tried to like run away from his grief for a while, but then the big change is when he realizes, no, this is all around me, and you have to go through to that other side. So I think that's what drives me.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Just go ahead, jump in if you wish.
I want to make just a quick helpful reminder for folks that if you want to raise your electronic hand, it's found down there under reaction by the little heart at the bottom of your screen. So sometimes that can help you get into the conversation. And I too thank you, Joanne. I just have so much feeling of Rumi. I keep Rumi books by my bedside and read something just about every night. It's just it just remind me of the fullness that he brings, and the sense that the sense is there for me so strong that my contractions and my expansions in this world go together beautifully. Help me fly just as bird wings help the bird fly, in one of his poems. He states that.
Wade, do you have a suggestion for the best view that we have options on to have the view and the slide? And we got speaker, gallery, multi-speaker, etc.
So, Ron, you'll find it when you click on screen share and you're getting ready to choose your program. There you will see the various options.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about all the rest of us too. We each have those options. So,
I think standard view works really well. You get the one full screen, you get a few people on the side. That's what I use when I'm watching a
well,
presentation.
when Gabe's speaking, I put it on speaker view, but otherwise I put it on gallery. So I just, okay.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you were asking, Ron. Yeah, thank you. One of the comments I want to make, Joanne, is I'm so glad you shared that quote about "I will meet you in the field beyond right and wrong," and that is part of the inspiration of the spiritual deepening program, that we create for each other this field beyond right and wrong, where we can look at all different kinds of perspectives and ways of being and becoming without having to judge them, and to begin to find creatively a fresh way forward. So I'm thrilled that you included that one. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I'm going to invite us to offer a bow to Joanne and her embodiment of Rumi. Thank you. So, Ron, you wanted to go next. You're on.
Thank you. Ah, well, just to recollect a little bit. So I chose Rilke, Rainier Maria Rilke. And I wanted to share, I've been called to this path for almost 50 years. I'm now 78. And everyone that's being shared here today, I have explored, but I haven't explored some of them recently. But Rumi and Rilke have stayed with me. And so I'm going to do a little screen share here too. Okay. if I can get it on. Yeah. So I really got into Rilke when I was reading another book. If I can get that other book. I can't get it to change. There we go. I was reading this book, Becoming Aware of the Logos, George Coolwind, who was a kind of an obscure, deep Christian mystic, trying to understand the Logos. That's been an ongoing thing. I've had many conversations with Endo Callis about the Logos. And on the third chapter, he had a little quote at the beginning. And this is the quote: Earth, is not this what you want? Invisibly to rise within us? Is it not your dream to be one day invisible? Earth, invisible? What is your urgent command, if not transformation? Earth, dear Earth, I will. I will. Something in me opened up, and I began to dig more and more into what this man was saying and his own journey. So here he is. He was born in 1875, died in 1926, age 51, of leukemia. He was born in Prague, a German parents. He was a bohemian, whatever that, kind of an early hippie. This little guy, he was a vegetarian. He was into health foods. Interesting guy. Now, does this guy look like a shaman to you? I love this quote. Our earliest poets were shamans. Today, as in the earliest times, true shamans are poets of consciousness who know the power of song and story to teach and to heal. They understand that through the play of words, sung or spoken, the magic of the real world comes dancing into the surface world. The right words open pathways between the worlds, and the poetry of consciousness delights the spirits. It draws the gods and goddesses who wish to live through us closer. We are delighting the spirits today, and they are with us. They are with us. So I began a journey that continues to this day. I found this book, 700 pages thick, and the image of Orpheus. Orpheus was one of the muses for Rilke, this guy that went into the underworld to reclaim his bride from Hades. And it's a fascinating, tragic story that Rilke really associated with. A Year with Rilke. It's Daily Meditations with Rilke by Joanne Macy, one of my heroes. I read it every day. And in the company of Rilke, it's an easy access into who Rilke was. So his poetry, his life was pretty bizarre. And I don't need to go into that much, but I want to share this. The love of his life was a woman 15 years older, Lou Andreas Salome. If you're not familiar with her, she is someone to be familiar with. She was muse to Nietzsche and to Freud and to Rilke. She was the first woman psychoanalyst. She was German, and she was from Russia. Look at this quote. And she met Rilke when he was only 22 and changed his life. Psychologically speaking, surrendering the notion of God's unconditioned supremacy. The image of God as absolute power figures as the accompaniment, if not the prerequisite, for an authentically spiritual relation to the Godhead. The attribution of unlimited power to God tends to come at the cost of the possibilities of feeling close to God, and that consequently jeopardizes the intimacy conducive to love. Wow, it's a whole nother perspective. And Carl Jung says that God is as dependent upon us as we are on God. Wow, that's a whole another thing. So, one of my favorite poems of Rilke. I live my life in widening rings that spread themselves over all. I may not complete the last of these things, but to journey is my call. I circle round God, the most ancient form, my journey 1,000 years long. Yet still, I don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or of a much larger song? Am I a falcon, a storm, or a much larger song? Whoa, whoa. And perhaps you recognize the painting behind it. So Rilke spent most of his life in solitude. It was absolutely essential for him. And connecting with the living spirit earth. If we surrendered to Earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. Instead, we entangle ourselves in knots of our own making and struggle, lonely and confused. So his two masterworks are considered the Duino elegies, 10 elegies, each 3 or 4 pages long of prose poems, and 59 sonnets to Orpheus, all finished within a few years of his death. And the ninth elegy has drawn a lot of attention. Towards the end of his earthly life, Rilke poses to the earth a great question. He had come to sense that he had discovered the planet's secret plan for humankind. And it took him 10 years from the first, and it was, he heard the voices of the wind of the first elegy. It took him 10 years to complete it through World War I. He talks to Gaia as a child might to a respected mother. He asked her to confirm his suspicion of her true motives. And this is where it comes in. Earth, is it not just this that you want to rise invisibly in us? Is it not your dream to one day be invisible, Earth invisible? What does that mean? I've been on that quest for 30 years myself. What does that mean? He says the Earth is visible in the first place only because we exist. We are the Earth's spectator. We alone behold what is. We alone understand the being of things. While animals live in the open, they just are what they are. We endure our existence, which means to stand outside. He sought instead a purely earthly, deeply earthly, blissful earthly consciousness, by means of which it might be possible to introduce what is here seen and touched into the widest orbit. The urgent command of the earth, Rilke understood, is and always has been transformation. Our presence, our entire destiny, are a part of Earth's transformation. I love this. Human beings are the bees of the invisible. We gather the wild honey of the visible in order to accumulate it within the great richness of the invisible. His later poetry, particularly the elegies, show us this at work. And it introduces new vibration frequencies into the vibration spheres of the universe. We are co-creating. After the long centuries of human audition, for which he stands as spokesman, he finds a way to explain himself and his species to the woman as great as the world. He finds a way of saying yes to the world, of accepting at last the earth's wooing of her prodigal son and daughter to return. So here's a little more of that poem. Is it not what you want to rise within us? Is it not your dream to be one day invisible, earth invisible? What is your urgent command if not transformation? Notice the words, earth, you darling, I will, I will. Oh, believe me, you need no more of your springtimes to win me. A single one, just one, is already more than my blood can endure. I've now been speaking unspeakably yours for ages and ages since the very beginning. Wow. A little explanation. It expresses a desire for the essence of the earth, its beauty and transience, to be internalized and transformed into something lasting within each of us. It's a call to become vessels for the earth's spirit, not through physical possession, but through deep internal connection and transformation. It's about the earth's quality, beauty, impermanence, power, becoming part of our inner world, where the earth's qualities can be experienced, absorbed, and transformed into something new. This transformation is invisible, but it's not because it's not physical, but a spiritual, existential one. Wow. So here we are. My eyes already touch the sunny hill, going far ahead of the road I have begun. So we are grasped by what we cannot grasp. It has inner light, even from a distance, and changes us, even if we do not reach it, into something else, which hardly sensing we already are. A gesture waves us on, answering our own wave, and what we feel is the wind on our face. This is what I see every morning out on my deck. So I sit there and open to the world and commune with the waters. This is Lake Michigan, the sky, the trees, and I'm changed and I'm blessed. Amen. A woman.
Wow, Ron, thank you. Thank you for the spiritual honey your being has brought us. And again, I'll open for anyone who wants to respond to Ron, either a physical response that you had or a thought that has come to you.
I was thinking about how I'm thinking of a line for the day is the I am because you are. And of course, I was loving that line in terms of our community, but listening to Ron, it's like it's it's more inclusive than that. I am because of the trees that are specifically outside my window, but of course, with this whole earth, I am because of the grounds of the Christine Center. Um, so it's not just the peoples, the two-leggeds, as Gabe would say.
Mhm.
Thanks, Ron.
Cheryl, please.
I met Ron about 6 years ago, and I went to a Tao meditation circle, had never met him. And in the middle of the circle, there was a bagua rug with a yin and yang. And I sat there and I went, hmm. And I went back a week later and I said, hmm. And a third week. And I said, Ron, whenever I sit in front of that rug, my feet vibrate and tingle and are really, really hot. And when Ron was speaking, especially about transformation and Rilke, again, my feet were burning hot and vibrating with energy. And for a while I said, well, that must mean something resonates with me. And I thought, well, that's silly. That can't be. But I'm continue to be fascinated with my hot vibrating feet when something resonates with me. And also, Gabe, when you ended speaking a while back, my heart always leaps out when you're when you're on the screen. That's all.
Oh, thanks. So my heart was burning within me. I'm going to use Emmaus language here. Were not our hearts burning within us as story was being told? My heart was burning at the fact that you spoke of earth wanting to be invisible. So translation, earth wanting to be spirit recognized, recognizing spiritual earth. And in a way, that's our contribution. We're the species that recognizes spiritual earth. We're the we're the spiritual ones. We're the ones that make spirit that have that can organize our lives around the spiritual. Fishes swim and birds fly and worms crawl and do all things better than we could any of those things. So what's the point of the human but to be able to have in our embodied state spiritual conversation, earth spirit. And it's just remarkable, Ron. Thank you for making those connections.
Yeah. It's interesting. Arthur C. Clarke in his novel, Childhood's End, speaks to that too, that the
Mhm.
earth is in process of transformation. Just we're all in it together and we need each other.
Mhm.
I love Ron, how you, I love Ron. I love Ron, how you, how you keep pointing to mystery. You know, I don't know if I'm a storm or a falcon or a song. There's just this, just things get left with mystery so often. You point to the mystery, and that's my experience of this world. I can say it's this and say it's that and experience this and experience that, and then there's no way to know. It's mystery, and I love that you bring that forward.
Please repeat the book title and author you just mentioned, Ron.
Oh, it's a science fiction book, Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. It was the inspiration for 2001. although they greatly changed it, but it was the inspiration for the movie 2001.
Thank you.
Anyone else to offer a comment or an experience as you heard Ron sharing about Rilke?
Oh, by the way, Rilke was Thomas Merton's one of his favorite poets. Yeah.
There are
Blake,
all these threads through all the
yeah,
people that we're
Blake
talking about.
Hopkins and Rilke.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, it was an honor to share.
Mhm. Thank you. So again, let's just bow to honor the incarnation of Rilke and Ron. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm watching the time and I'm wondering, we've already been together a little over an hour. According to my clock, it's 10:43. I'm wondering if we could come back at 10:55. In other words, we want to start the next session, the next section before 11. So 10:55, we'll come back, check your clocks, and it's 11 minutes from now. Thank you. Anyway, welcome back. During the break, I couldn't keep buzzing about Rumi and Rilke. The words just kept flowing, and I kept seeing you, Joanne, and you, Ron, speak about these great loves of your life. So grateful for that. Wade, Elaine, and I will round out this next hour and give some instruction about encountering over the lunchtime, and then we'll see what we make of it. We'll move into small groups in the afternoon, like we're accustomed to doing. Each of us of the spiritual guides will be with a small group, and Wade will organize that over the lunch hour, and we'll go into those groups when we come back this afternoon, and then we'll come again back together in the large group. Now, I want to say this now, and I'll say it again. When we do the checkout in the large group, we'll do a checkout. You're invited to take on the persona of someone who has been a spiritual teacher to you. So you'll not be speaking as yourself, but you'll be speaking them through you. And so we'll check out that way this afternoon. It should be a lot of fun, and I look forward to that. And we'll have it recorded so we can chuckle over it when we get the recording again. So like that. Again, welcome back. And Wade, I want to invite you to your sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thomas Merton. Thomas Merton, philosopher, thinker, writer, poet, mystic, and Catholic. It surprises me. I grew up firstly in the Methodist Church, and then became a Unitarian. And how did I end up surrounded by all these Catholics at the Christine Center and in this Catholic world, and so inspired by a Catholic man? It's quite delightful. I discovered Merton, came across Merton quite inadvertently in my 30s. And he keeps coming back to me over the years in different ways. It's just a wonderful relationship, if you will. And, he helps me open to my deeper self, to my true nature, to God, to a larger reality, really. And I'm going to start with a pithy quote from Thomas Merton, which is, "The biggest human temptation is to settle for too little." The world keeps, that's something that's happening to me. The world is getting bigger as I dive more deeply into myself and into the spirituality that I'm learning and living. I was coming of age in the 60s, and what was happening I'm the same age as Ron, by the way, 78. Coming of age in the 60s, graduated from high school, went to college, and then just got lost in the counterculture, if you will. I didn't get lost in it. I got found in it. I'll put it that way, more positively. I, I became a hippie, and was reading things like Ram Dass, Be Here Now, and that was a very important book to me. And The Three Pillars of Zen, and oddly enough, I even picked up Teilhard de Chardin's The Phenomenon of Man. I don't know quite how that fell into my hands, and read that. I was having a hard time understanding it, but I enjoyed reading it. And then I became part of the Back to the Land movement, dropped out of college and moved to a hippie commune in western Wisconsin, where I still live in that same area. And it was a wonderful, wonderful time and a great experience for me all the way around. And then after being on that commune, I could talk, I could go on and on, there's not enough time, but my partner and I at the time, who became the mother of my children later, we went to California. We decided to go to California for a year. And Haight-Ashbury was still around, but it was not so much anymore. But somehow, on that trip out there, I picked up a copy of The Seven-Story Mountain by Thomas Merton, who I'd never heard of. The famous story of his life, his autobiography, and his passage from being a very worldly young man to a man and a very intellectual young man, and even fathered an illegitimate child and was drinking and living quite a full life. He started to awaken to the reality of God and what that meant to him, and how that became the focus of his life through that book, and I didn't relate so well to the word God. That's something I still don't relate to so well because it has so much baggage with it. But the way he described his experience of unfoldment and awakening and the depth of reality that he experienced, and with such honesty, he's just so honest the way he opens up every little thing, and later on even brought it into the world of politics, his writing into the world of politics. It meant so much to me, and I was having a very difficult time in my relationship at that time too, in my life. I was young and going through a lot of changes, so he just helped me awaken to something much larger, and something about the heart. He's always in his heart and always wanting more truth. And one of the things that he did was, he ended up in that story, he talks about how he ends up at Gethsemane as a Trappist monastery, living in silence and living that totally contemplative life, getting up at 2:00 in the morning. But one of the things they did there was they farmed and they raised oats, and they shocked oats. I don't know if you all know what that is, but when I moved to that hippie commune, that farm in the country, we got together with the neighbors who were still thrashing, and we did that. We made shocks and harvested the oats. And it was just a profound experience of connection to the land and to the people and to the old ways and to the unfolding, the connection of the hippies and the old farmers in the area. It was really a beautiful, beautiful melding. But I want to read to you an excerpt from his book about that. About being on the land and harvesting oats. How sweet it is out in the fields at the end of the long summer afternoons. The sun is no longer raging at you, and the woods are beginning to throw long blue shadows over the stubble fields where the golden shocks are standing. The sky is cool, and you can see the pale half moon smiling over the monastery in the distance. Perhaps a clean smell of pine comes down to you out of the woods on the breeze and mingles with the richness of the fields and of the harvest. And when the undermaster claps his hands for the end of work, and you drop your arms and take off your hat to wipe the sweat out of your eyes, in the stillness you realize how the whole valley is alive with the singing of the crickets. A constant universal treble going up to God out of the fields, rising like the incense of an evening prayer to the pure sky. Los perennis, perpetual praise. And I experienced that. And one of my favorite photographs is one I made of the shocking of the oats in the fields and the land. It's just, as I was rereading this, I started to cry the other day. It's just so moving to me, that connection to the earth, that being of the earth, the sweat in your eyes. And I, at that time in my life, I even had read about meditation, and I would sit in those fields at times and try to meditate. I didn't know what the heck to do. I didn't have any instruction, but I would try to meditate and sit in kind of cross-legged and be there with the fields and the hills and the land that I so loved. And then I ended up at the Christine Center, where I took meditation classes, Seminar 1 with Johanna, and I learned to meditate, and it was wonderful for me. And I expanded on that, and I ended up liking Seminar 3, which was the week-long silent meditation in the Vipassana style. And I did that several times. And then I got together with the Buddhists from Minnesota, and I did a bunch of those retreats with them. And just that, it's the kind of thing Thomas Merton described when he arrived at Gethsemane, that entering into the silence with people in a contemplative space, in a setting, and just feeling that deep connection, that deep belonging too that comes out and just opens the heart. It's a powerful experience for me over and over again, and I still like to do it. Thomas Merton, later on in his life, if you've studied him, he moved toward the Eastern religions. His Christianity evolved, as I'll call it, and he ended up going to the East, in fact. And going to the East, if I had photos, which I'm not showing here, I'm the visual guy and I'm not showing photos, but there's a wonderful photograph I just saw of Thomas Merton standing beside the Dalai Lama. Big smiles on their faces. The Dalai Lama, a young man, probably about 38 or something, and he's the man we know now as the elder man. Yeah. And a big connection for me with Thomas Merton is that something I discovered a few years after I had read that book and come back to Wisconsin, is that Thomas Merton was a photographer. When he was a hermit at Gethsemane, a professional photographer who was a friend of his gave him a camera, and he spent a lot of time wandering, just like me. I was so connected to it. It inspired me, it validated me, and it helped me deepen my work, I suppose. He would take pictures of used paint cans and old fences and the roots of trees, and this was a wonderful connection for me, and a connection to his life of the spirit, and to knowing oneself more deeply. So here's another quote from him that I love, because he was also, he was the mystic and so on, but he very much identified as an artist. He was an artist. He said, "Art enables us to find ourselves and to lose ourselves at the same time." That's an embodiment I love. I know who I am, and I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm becoming, as Gabe so often says. And another part to that is that about 3 years ago, I came across a book that I hadn't heard about that was written 25 years after Thomas Merton died. He tragically died on that trip to the East, if you don't know that. It was an accident. It was just a tremendous sadness to so many people. Such a tremendous loss to the development of spirit and understanding. But there's a fellow named Ron Seitz who's wrote a book called Song for Nobody, which is the name of one of Thomas Merton's poems. And Seitz lived in Louisville and was close friends, intimate friends with Merton during the time that he was at Gethsemane. And the two of them would get together sometimes, and they would spout poetry and discuss life and explore Merton's. He's famous for having had a love affair with a young woman, at least briefly, while he was a priest at Gethsemane. You know, it's just there's amazing stories about what I think of as the fullness of this man. But the two of them would get together, and one of the things they would often do is have some beer. they would this fellow would bring a six-pack of beer with him, and the two of them would sit out in the woods and have these long discussions for hours, he says. And it's a wonderful book exploring all of these things. And in fact, even something that they did is they went to Louisville together to a jazz club. Thomas Merton loved jazz. And the guy describes how Merton went up and sat right in the front row, right in front of the musicians, and was totally involved in that. And then later on was talking, quoted him saying all these things about how jazz is prayer in the hands of these artists. It's just prayer. It's speaking to God, you know. It just is this wonderfully rich embodiment of all of life. The beer, the love, the sanctity, the silence. He loved to be in silence. He was a hermit, for gosh sake. He lived as a hermit at Gethsemane in his later years there. And at the same time, he described how he would be a lonely hermit doing his writing, and then he would just be so lonely for human connection. He had to go be with people. You know, he was both and in so many ways. It's the direct humanity, the aliveness, the embodiment in the world. I just love that, and I connect to that, and it has taught me and encouraged me. And I'll wind up with a quote from Thomas Merton here, something that was part of his book, The Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of our inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful. These words, when I heard them 10 or 15 years ago, were very meaningful to me, and in some ways I think it's more meaningful now with our modern world, the speeding up of everything. How do we hang on to that inner wisdom, that divine self that we are, at the same time we are an earthly, alive, full human being in all of this? That's my Thomas Merton for today.
Thank you, Wade. The last quote really bears emblazoning on my forehead the frenzy of my work and my activism, you know, thinking that I'm doing good stuff. I want to also bow to how, in my mind, I know Thomas Merton's work well, and in my mind it has a certain flavor. And whenever I meet you, especially when you wear your cap and the monk's cap, right? You embody that flavor. You know,
Nice
you
to
have
hear.
this monastic, artistic, creative aura for me. So certainly you embody Merton in some way. It's in your bones. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you. Yes.
And I want to open the microphone, open the space for anyone who wants to respond to Wade. Elaine, please. And then Dawn.
Thank you, Wade, for that. I think too, you embody Thomas Merton. That was so clear, but then it made me think too, like we're often drawn to people because there's a resonance, but it's also like we already have some of those qualities that we see in the other. And as we walk with these mystics, to sort of keep that in mind as well. It's not so much just being inspired or emulating their example, but it's more of like a recognition of, oh, I'm seeing this in you, and therefore it might be also in me. So I just think that's pretty cool to think about.
Yeah. It's really true of the photography for me, you know, that I didn't know he was a photographer. And I was really developing that in myself. And then I discovered he was. And it's like, oh, yes, that resonance. Yeah.
Thank you. Dawn?
Yep. So Wade, that last quote too, can you tell me what book that came from, first of all?
Yeah, the Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander.
I felt myself like being tied to the earth with that comment, like totally rooted. And I definitely need to hear this. This is like my life's battle, right? I quit my full-time job and all of a sudden my life is full again with so much activity. So thank you so much for that. That really, I feel like that's what I needed to hear today.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Yeah, it's the modern world there. Everything is available, everything all at once, and it's just going whoosh, it comes in, and how do we sort it out? Say no. Yeah, it's a real dilemma for me. It's an ongoing part of life.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Leo.
Yeah, I had a connection come up. So Joanne's Rumi quote was, start a huge, foolish project, makes no difference what people think of you. And then I had a link with what Wade shared. The biggest human temptation is I'm paraphrasing, is to settle for something too little. So I just see those, those two are just talking about settling. At least that's what it's saying to me right now. Settling for something too small because maybe you think something outrageous is, you get caught up in your own image of what am I trying to say? Yeah, I get caught up on my own image of, maybe too concerned with what others may think. If I have some
keeps us from
wild idea.
Keeps us from doing those wonderful things that do come to us to
Yeah.
do. You know, we don't want to do too many of those, but we want to do them. We have to put it all together.
Yeah.
Two things that what you just said, Wade, makes me think about when people talk about writing projects. For me, I have what I call the third paragraph thing, where I'll have just amazing, great Pulitzer Prize winning ideas. And I start writing, and the third paragraph is where the little guys come and say, this is so stupid. You should not write another single word. And nowadays I can kind of go, oh, hello, third paragraph, But the other thing I was going to say was based on what Leo said, it makes me think both Merton and Rumi, they did things wrong. Merton was messing around and drinking, having too much fun. And Rumi, being married to him must have been a real pain. He develops these friendships with, guys who come in on a donkey and don't look good. And then he goes off and sits with them in rooms for months and months. And like someone was home taking care of stuff, right? But they also, I think people saw in both these people some greatness. And it was part of that wrongdoing that nurtured and created that greatness and let them pursue huge foolish projects like Noah building an ark. What? Anyway, thank you, Leo. I like how you put that together.
Get into good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good
That's
trouble.
a great summary. Great summary.
In our evolution, we never have a straight path. that's the other reality. I mean, all the stories of all of the three we've met so far have been winding and convoluted. And one of the phrases that stays with me from Teilhard is that evolution is a groping into the future. You cannot see clearly into the future. So you're trying to feel your way in the dark, moving into the future. And so nature does that. You know, nature has these fits and starts in the evolutionary forms of things. And so we do too. And we're kind of just, you know, in a way, blundering, blustering, finding our way forward on a path nobody has made for us. And so to make, quote, mistakes, I want to reframe that really creatively speaking. It creates the conditions, like, so if I judge this as not helpful, then it creates the conditions for the next movement, for the next unfolding, for the next brushstroke, for the next sentence. You know, not to let it stop us, but to understand it's all part of the process. It's that way. Yeah.
Yesterday, I stood on my deck and I looked at a plant, a vine that had grown to the top of the trellis and was reaching out into space looking for where it was going to go next. And there was nowhere to go, it was just empty space. The next day, I came back and saw that it had turned around and come back and wrapped back on the trellis and headed down. So it's just that groping into the unknown.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything else to speak to about Thomas Merton? Wade's sharing. Thank you. So we'll bow. Great gratitude, Wade, for the embodiment. So Elaine.
There we go. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Evelyn Underhill. She's a favorite mystic of mine, one who claims that mysticism is the art of union with reality, the really real, as Gabe described, and that a mystic is a person who has attained that union in greater or lesser degree, or a mystic is one who aims at and believes in such attainment. And based on that definition, I would venture to say that we are presently, happily, finding ourselves within a gathering of everyday mystics. Evelyn Underhill lived in the early 20th century. She was a British mystic, prolific author, poet, lay theologian, peace activist, spiritual director, and retreat leader. She's best known for her seminal 1911 book called Mysticism, a study in the nature and development of spiritual consciousness, which is an in-depth exploration of the mystic path, tracing the soul's journey from awakening to union with the divine. A few years later, she wrote Practical Mysticism, a little book for normal people, which is a brief but powerful guidebook that speaks directly to the everyday seeker. And that's one of the things I love most about her, that she believed the spiritual life was the birthright of every human soul. She also understood that we don't walk this path alone, that spiritual awakening unfolds in relationship with the divine, with the world, with ourselves, and with one another. I first encountered Evelyn Underhill in 2022 during one of Sister Gabe's programs at the Christine Center called Holy and Amazing. We were introduced to a circle of remarkable women, mystics, guides, wisdom bearers, who shaped the inner landscape of Christian spiritual guidance. Each one offered something stirring and soulfully significant, but it was Evelyn who reached across a century and captured my heart and attention. I learned that she was a lay person, with no formal religious title, and yet her life was infused with a depth of spirituality that felt utterly real. Her mysticism wasn't lofty or unreachable. She lived it through the ordinariness of life. Evelyn drew from many wells, Catholic and Anglican traditions, esoteric writings, and Neoplatonic thinkers. She had a mystical awakening in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament and came to believe, as I have, that nothing is truly real unless it has a spiritual dimension. When Evelyn came into my life, I was still holding questions about my own journey. After my mother's passing in 2009, I found myself at a Roman Catholic retreat a year later, seeking, grieving, open. It was there that I, through extraordinary grace, in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, and in the company of other seekers and believers, awakened to a love that permeates all things, the kind of love that undoes and remakes you. That experience and the transformative years that followed turned my life upside down in the most challenging and beneficial ways possible, but it left me hungry for a deeper understanding. Traditional church teachings didn't give me the language for what I was experiencing. Then came Evelyn. Through her, I recognized the path I was on, a mystical interior unfolding rooted in divine love. She affirmed the shape of my journey and it helped me to trust it. Meeting Evelyn was like meeting someone who knew, and through her, I felt met. Since then, I've spent some time with Evelyn's writings, prayers, poems, letters, essays, and books, and especially her landmark book, Mysticism, in which she masterfully delineates the stages of the spiritual life. She gives language to a journey that many of us are already on, even if we haven't quite identified it as that. And perhaps what I find most comforting is how she affirms the realness of the path, the highs and the lows, the joy and the dryness, the longing and the love. She names the 5 stages in the soul's movement toward union with the divine nature of reality, which she calls the real with a capital R. It's not a strict sequence, but a rhythm of deepening experience that is both deeply human and profoundly transformative. The 5 stages are awakening, purgation, illumination, the dark night of the soul, and union. The journey begins with awakening, that sudden awareness that there's something more. Underhill describes it as the soul waking up to the presence of the divine all around and within us. This can come as joy, a moment of clarity, or a deep longing we can't quite explain. It's that sacred nudge many of us have felt through beauty, silence, music, grief, or wonder that pulls us beyond ourselves. Then comes purgation, and this one can be rough. It's the part where we begin to see ourselves more clearly with all the clutter, the ego, the shadow, the attachments we didn't realize we were holding. Underhill talks about this as a necessary stripping away, not out of punishment, but so we can make space for God. It's hard work, this letting go, simplifying, noticing what keeps us from love, but it's also incredibly liberating. After the purgation comes illumination, those moments when the light breaks through and we feel the nearness of God. Evelyn writes about experiences of joy, insight, beauty, or a sense of God's voice and presence. These moments, she reminds us, are gifts. They're not proof of holiness or spiritual achievement, but rather encouragement to keep moving forward. Many of us know those moments, brief but unforgettable, when we feel radically alive, deeply loved and connected to something greater than ourselves. But then, often unexpectedly, we move into the dark night of the soul. This is not really a state of depression or despair, though it can feel that way. It's a stage of deep interior silence, when God feels absent. The old consolations fall away, and we're asked to trust without evidence. It's a kind of holy unknowing, where we are asked to lean on trust more than feeling. Underhill describes this as an intense purification, a kind of spiritual winter that prepares us for even deeper union. And in a world that chases constant positivity, this stage reminds us that silence, grief, and waiting have their own wisdom. And then slowly, and sometimes without noticing, we are led into union, a continuous conscious communion with God. It's the state where love becomes the atmosphere we live in, where our will and God's will begin to move together. Underhill calls this the complete spiritual marriage, a surrender so full and free that it becomes joy. And what I love is that she doesn't describe union as an end point or a reward. It's just life, finally lived in love. It spills over into how we show up in the world, how we relate to others, how we carry beauty, humility, and compassion into the ordinary moments of our lives. When I first read about these stages and reflected on my own journey, I didn't think of them as steps on a ladder, but rather as movements, ebb and flow, light and shadow, through which love keeps shaping us. Evelyn helped me name the terrain of my soul, and because of her, I've learned to trust it more. For me, this path Evelyn mapped out is a deeply human process, one I seem to enter and re-enter again and again. Also, I know I'm not alone in that. Some of us may find ourselves in stirrings of awakening. Others might be deep in purgation or walking quietly through the dark night. Some may be wrestling in illumination, while others sense the elusive nearness of union. And that's all, and that's all as it should be. What matters is that we're on the way, that we keep turning toward love, that we allow the journey to shape us into people who are more fully alive and incarnate, present to the sacred in all things, and bearing that presence wherever we go. Evelyn Underhill's contributions have been and continue to be invaluable to me as I serve in my ministries, as a spiritual companion, as a guide, as someone trying to walk the Christian way with sincerity and love. I've even found myself quoting her in academic papers, especially when trying to convince my seminary professors that the mystical dimension of scripture and tradition are not only real, but essential. And I have to say, it's been working. I think so. I'm getting in there. So, some final words to share with you from Evelyn. We are all the kindred of the mystics. The soul has an inalienable homing instinct, and even the most earthbound feels sometimes the tug of the divine. And for those who are a little bit more practically minded, she says, it is those who have a deep and real inner life who are best able to deal with the irritating details of the outer life. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine, truly. When you said, as we were planning this, that you would be doing Evelyn Underhill as your mystic, I was so thrilled because in the Catholic world, it's assumed there are no Protestant mystics. You know, it's the Catholics who are the mystics. And Evelyn Underhill actually is like the grandmother of the retreat movement. I mean, retreat movement exists because of her pioneering work. They say that because the retreats that in the Catholic world were intended for priests and sisters, not for lay people. So for layperson to be on retreat, we had Evelyn to thank for it. That a layperson could even think that a retreat could be for them. So that's one piece of it. So thank you so much for bringing Evelyn forward. It's just marvelous. Any responses to Elaine? Please, Sheila.
Well, I just want to thank you. This sounds like a really good resource to learn more about mysticism. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, Evelyn's book on mysticism is the textbook to read if you are beginning any kind of Christian mystic study. You begin with Evelyn's work. And she was also the first to do it cross-culturally.
Right.
Yeah.
Ron?
Now, early in my journey, Evelyn Underhill was very important. Her book on worship, her book on mysticism, her book on practical mysticism. I have them, and I still have them. I've had them for 40 years. So I was thrilled too, Elaine, when you said you were going to bring her back into my life. So it's a great gift, and thank you.
Thanks, Ron. You're welcome.
And I love the slides. Wow, beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, I like doing those. I also wanted to say, like, the other thing too, which I didn't get a chance to add, was that I've lost my faith in Christianity and have been finding my way back, and felt like it's important for me to have a tradition to belong to. And Evelyn was part of that way back, like allowing me to ground myself in the mystic tradition, has really given me that sense of belonging that I don't necessarily find in any specific church at this time. And so in that way too, it's been an incredible blessing in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Valerie?
First, thanks, Elaine, for sharing this, because this is someone I've never heard of. But one of the things that really stood out for me as you were kind of describing what she has to offer is that it's all a process. It's not like get from point A to point B. It's a, go here, do this, and you may have glimpses, but it's like a process. And that it's always to keep turning to love. Like that's the question to always ask. And that's been there for me for a long time, is what's love got to do with it, and like that to me is the help for the direction in the path. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yes, and you're welcome. And Evelyn actually makes a point of that, and she draws a distinction, I think, between the Christian mystics and folks from other traditions, and this idea of love and this incarnational being of love in the world is what she identified as the thing that sets them apart. I've not done much research into other mystics from other traditions, but I would say that that is the one thing that I too find quite endearing about our Christian faith, is this idea of love being at the center.
Anyone else? Oh, please go, Kay.
So one of the things that, and I too, Elaine, had never heard of her, so thank you so much for bringing her to our attention. And when you were going through those stages, I had this connection point of a thread with Gabe's very first presentation where she talked about how chaos and destruction comes and then something new comes after that. And I'm just wondering if you've read or if Evelyn Underhill also talked about groups going through that process rather than individuals. So could the church go through this? Could a culture go through this? Did she allude to anything like that?
Yeah, she certainly did. She lived through a world war, and it was right at the turn of the century where she was, beginning to process all of this. And she very much identified that as part of it, like being able to recognize that in the whole. Gabe, you might know more about that than I do.
No, you gave a great answer for how she approached it, but to remember that the institution is its people. Yeah, so what the bulk of the people are experiencing is what the institution experiences. That may not be in line with what leadership in the institution thinks. See, and then there's more tensions. I'm now adding organizational development insights to this, but there's what the humans who are the leadership think the organization is experiencing, and then there's what the bulk of the organization itself is experiencing. And they may not always align, but here's the important point from Evelyn and any other mystic. It's like when you think you've got it, that's exactly when you have to let go again. That's the dark night. You have the pleasure of finally getting it. No, you don't. Because the conditions that brought that forward keep changing. So that's the next thing. So every time you got it, enjoy it for the moment and then know to let go of that. And if we can anticipate the letting go of it, then the dark night doesn't crush us as it could. Again, because it always feels like the rug is being pulled out from under you. I mean, we all know this. We know what this feels like. Everything we thought worked doesn't anymore. So, like that, yeah. Also, Elaine, as a lay woman and as a householder like Evelyn, really, you incarnate and can bring forward that spirit in your own work. And thanks for flying the mysticism flag in the theology school. Appreciate that enormously. Thank you. So a bow for Elaine's work. Thank you. Well, in the last 20 minutes or so that we have, I'm going to bring it home. And I also want to share slides. And of course, I'm going to share Hildegard of Bingen. And I have to, because she's the one that opened for me the way of being who I am today. Now, I want to say the way she came to me was most unusual. I was in a master's of divinity program in Mundelein in Chicago. Matthew Fox was running the program. And it's the first day of the class. I do not want to be there because I'm being sent back to school. I already have my degrees. I'm being sent back to school by my community as a novice to take this class, to take this course. Do not want to be there and very resentful. And Matthew Fox walks in and the first thing he says, "Does anyone speak German and can read it?" And I raised my hand and he drops the collected works of Hildegard of Bingen, these red books, into my lap and says, "She's not in English. Do something about it." And so that's what then began my master's thesis, and it became this modest little book called Meditations with Hildegard of Bingen. And of course, I was in a Franciscan world, and as far as I was concerned, all the mystics were Italian, Francis and Clare. This is a picture taken at the Christine Center of the last Hildegard Festival. I ran 12 festivals featuring Hildegard, and in my community, they started calling me Hilda Gabe. But I want to say that for 12 years, we spent learning and studying and celebrating Hildegard of Bingen. Just very quickly, she was one of the last born of 10 children, and so she was tithed to the church. From her very beginning, she was a kind of odd child, so I think they were relieved that they could give her to the church. She was very intuitive and often spoke of things before they happened. So that was very scary to her parents. She was given to the dedicated to the monastery, and she was under the tutelage of Jutta, who was an anchoress attached to a monastery. So let me describe this. So this holy woman, Jutta of Sponheim, was in several rooms that were built along the monastery wall, and she was in a way cemented in, and she couldn't leave those rooms. She had 2 rooms and a courtyard, and people provided for her food. The monks provided for her food, took away the waste products, and there was this flow of anchoring with her prayers the monastery. And Hildegard was given to her. And then along the way, other young women were given to that same anchorage. By the way, Julian of Norwich was also an anchoress. They were given to that anchorage, and it became a little convent of sisters. And when Jutta died, Hildegard was elected as the teacher or the leader of that monastery. Now, here's the important part for me. Hildegard was rather sickly most of her life. Now, I want to say she was 42, 43 when this event happened. That would have been considered a long life at this time. This is the 12th century. And to live that long was a decent amount of years. She had been sickly up until that point, and she often would have dreams and intuitions about theology and about who God was and about what should happen at the monastery and how to live in the world, but she never did anything with any of that. And finally, when she was at this age of 42, going on 43, she had this experience of God speaking to her, and that became her book Shivyas. Here's what happened. These are Hildegard's words, and this is what blew me away. So I was reading this, never had heard of Hildegard before, when I was in my 30s. So Hildegard says, "Look with me. In the 43rd year of my earthly journey, a vision from heaven filled me." And here's what the vision was. She heard the words, "How fragile you are, human. You are made of dust and grime. But articulate what you see and hear. Write it all down. Let the will of God who guides the universe guide you." And here's the line: "Get to it. Speak of these visions." And this experience electrified Hildegard, and she got to it, and she began to write her visions down, but not before she argued. So after she had this experience, she spoke about how she felt the sun warming her heart. She had this fullness that was rich. She was able to understand what the scriptures said. It was like all these aha moments came to her, as she says, even though she had no formal instruction. So she says to God, "How can this be?" This, like Mary, "How can this be?" And then God speaks back to her. So it's like, Here is the revelation. This woman having a conversation with God hadn't occurred to me to do that. So God says back to Hildegard, you're often depressed, timid, and you're insecure. And then God says, because you're conscientious, you feel guilty, and chronic pain has scarred you. So it's like God reveals to her the truth about herself, but not just the negative, the positive. The deep mysteries of God have saturated you, as has God's humility. So now, this is also very shocking to me. I was studying psychology, I was studying theology, and now I was translating Hildegard of Bingen, and it lays out right there the arguments I myself have had with God. And here she is speaking of it in her own validation of a conversation. Then God goes on to Hildegard. Now you must give others an intelligible account of what you see with your inner eye and what you hear with your inner ear. Now then, your testimony will help them. As a result, others will learn how to know their Creator. They'll no longer refuse to adore God. Here was the breaking open in my heart. I must do this too. I have to give an intelligible account of my inner life, not because of me, but because of how it might help someone else. That my testimony could be helpful. Gabe's testimony could be helpful. And as a result, others will know God and they'll be they can't but help be enthused about the transcendent and the divine. And then Hildegard again argues with God. As I started this task, I looked to the living light, asking, what should I write down? And that brightness commanded, be simple, be pure, write down what you see and hear. It's like, trust your experience, Gabe. And that's what Hildegard did. She would have an experience of God, and she would say to her sisters, look with me now. What does this mean? And she would talk about God. She would talk about the human. She would talk about creation. And she would encourage her sisters to read, look, sense, and think. So here we are today, all of you and me. We want to do the same thing. This is exactly what we want to do, to read, look, sense, reflect, as all of us together are going to be breaking open our experiences of the transcendent and how that has shaped our life. So I've never forgotten Hildegard's call in the middle of her life. She then lived another 40 years. It's like suddenly another whole lifetime was added on to what she did. If you want a really good resource, you don't know much about Hildegard, the resource is a Hildegard Reader, and it's by Carmen Butcher, Butcher. And it's available. I always have copies of it available in the bookstore. So the next time you come, you can check it out. A Hildegard Reader, Carmen Butcher, is the book that I recommend. In any case, the piece that's significant and that has shaped me is then that injunction to share what you see and hear shaped my life as a retreat director. It shaped my life as someone who wanted to do retreat work. And I find myself here because I discovered her right at the beginning of my religious life. Now, of course, it's a great mystery why I discovered her as a Franciscan, but I was very happy about that because finally there was a German saint I could relate to. Rather than all these Italian Franciscans, huh? But the other important thing was that she was deeply connected to Earth. And I just want to say this as a kind of summary statement. She said, the Earth will heal you. and she had a hospice and a kind of medicine healing practice for the Crusaders that returned. They came down the Rhine past her monastery. They would stop there. They would receive treatment, and particularly for post-traumatic stress, she would use herbs. She would use music. She would use healing stones. This woman was a, a giant in terms of innovation, but that isn't as important to me as the words that still ring in my heart. Get to it. You got something to share. Get to it. No excuses. Get to it. And it's not about sharing you for my sake, for me, like, oh, look how great I am. But the reason of sharing is how magnificent it is how God is working in our lives, or how magnificent it is the transcendent is revealing itself in our lives so that we can hold that and celebrate that. So there's a very quick introduction to Hildegard. I'm enthused.
Isn't there a pretty good movie too about it,
Oh
Vision?
yeah, if you again, the movie is with subtitles. It's called Vision, and it's a full feature-length movie. And all of Hildegard's words in that movie were actually taken from letters and texts she wrote. So that, and there was Barbara Newman, who is the foremost English-speaking Hildegard scholar, was a consultant on that film. So the film is great if you have a chance to watch the movie Vision, A Life of Hildegard of Bingen. Thank you, Ron, for mentioning that. Yes, please, Michelle. We can't hear you. Make sure your volume is up.
Well, now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. A question, you threw out the term from Hildegard's life of the anchoress, and I'm curious a bit more to learn more about what that meant at that time. But the thought occurred to me that perhaps we're all meant to be anchors or anchoresses, just out dispersed in daily life.
I love that. I love that idea, Michelle. So the idea of an anchoress was that you would be a hermit, but rather than being a hermit in a hermitage somewhere, the hermitage is literally cemented onto a monastery wall. And, so that your life is literally circumscribed by the space of the 2 rooms you have in the little garden. Usually there's a cat involved because of the mice. And, uh, and so you'll see pictures of Julian of Norwich with a cat. And the idea was that the women, mostly women who were anchoresses, were like spiritual directors. The townspeople would come by and they would tell their problems to the anchoress, and the anchoress would give them some kind of wisdom back. So I love the idea of us anchoring each other. I think we're doing that in the spiritual deepening program. We're finding a way, and in a way, when you come here, we're anchored together here at the Christine Center. It's like if I think of the anchorage as a kind of island of sanity in the midst of the chaos of everyday life. Oh, and then Christina, thank you very much for letting us know that there's a current episode featuring Hildegard. But now I want to also say I want to be really uh, clear-eyed about this. It was a great privilege for a monastery to have an anchoress, and it would certainly increase the revenue of pilgrims coming to the place to consult. They would stay at the monastery overnight. There would be revenue involved like that. So it was as if you had a famous hermit now attached to the monastery. So there was a benefit to a monastery or a church to have an anchoress. that way too. I don't want to just want to be clear-eyed about this. So there's always the how shall I say it, the dark side and the light side. Not to take anything away from the person who was the anchoress, but the whole practice was an unusual one. And yeah. I also want to say I have a sister in my own community who speaks of herself as an anchoress and created her home as an anchorage and did spiritual direction from her home. So there are very many ways to think about how to be anchored, and I love that image. Thanks.
I also wonder about it from the point of view, I've heard this said about those who have more of a contemplative grounding, that in this world of so much anxiety and chaos, the presence of these beings throughout the planet becomes more and more important, that they're kind of holding, anchoring the energy down for everyone. So thank you.
And to think about one's own prayer is doing that. I mean, really, to think about my spiritual practice as contributing to the anchoring of the world or the transformation, to be the providing the steadiness for the ongoing transformation. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right, so I want to prepare us for the lunch break, and you received an outline for today, and on that outline, there was a little guide for the lunchtime practice. We've always done this, that there's an opportunity for you to take a half an hour during the lunch break to engage in a spiritual practice. So set your timer for a half an hour, set an intention, and Michelle, you just gave us one. May this be for the anchoring of the transformation of the world, or for the steadiness of the world. So to set an intention, settle in, notice your own incarnation, get a sense of being not only in body, but in soul. By the way, that would be Hildegard's inspiration. As the heart is in the body, so the body is in the soul. So the heart is in the body, so the body is in the soul. So get a sense of yourself embodied, and then the sense of your body in spirit, in soul. And then, becoming still, invite someone to show up. Now, it could be the one that you prepared to share. It could be someone else. Be surprised. Who knows, after this conversation, who might want to show up. Invite a spiritual guest to come pay a visit. And then wait and see who shows up. Then welcome them, do a little exchange. Hello, unexpected. Oh, hello, so glad you came. However, be playful with the dialogue. See what comes. Pretend that you're 3 years old and someone has visited you. No questions, are you real or not? You just engage. And then ask them if they may have something that they'd like to share with you. But in the meantime, also engage all your senses. That is to say, your sense of touch, your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, your sense of seeing, your spiritual sensing of the transcendent, which we're practicing. So let that be part of what you do. Then let the visitor go. Journal. Don't try to journal while you're having the experience. Journal afterwards. Journal what it was like. What was the waiting like? What was your experience of the visit? And what might you want to remember? And of course, lots of gratitude to end it. So it's a kind of experiment. It's a kind of play. And then we'll see what's come up when we come back together again after lunch. Thank you. All right, so this is the last hour we have together today. And the thought was that we'd open the first half hour just in terms of anything anyone wanted to offer from their experience today. And then we'll use the last half hour for a checkout. And the checkout will be in the persona of some person that inspires you, and you'll give us some words of wisdom, something pithy. One of the things that got shared in my group, Sharon shared this in my group, this bit of wisdom: if you can't carry it, don't take it. And in lots of ways, I need that on my forehead too. Uh, and so something like that, right? So and so to take on the in a way sense into the presence of the one who inspires. We'll do that for the second half, and then speak in their voice, and then that will be how we check out. In other words, like leave a little legacy of spiritual wisdom for a checkout. So first half hour, please, anything anyone wants to say about the experience we've had together. Looking for perhaps sensations, body experiences, or insights, or just a simple response to something that happened. So the time is open for whoever wishes to speak. I'm welcoming the team also in terms of your experience to speak, so don't feel like you can't offer something. We're all in this together. Please, Sheila.
Well, we talked about how we can't necessarily talk about things like this with just friends, and how wonderful it is to be in group and to be with everyone here where we can talk about how things come through in a unique way for each of us. And so just grateful for this.
Yes, yes, to create the space. And this is where the we is so significant. We are because you are, and you are because we are. And this is the real modeling of the interdependence.
So, so two things I wanted to share. One, during that time over the noon break, I had a very profound experience, leaving me in tears, like just the whole time. I was just tearful. And Sister Diane, who was my spiritual advisor in college, just came to me, just like this huge whoosh, huge whoosh. And oh my gosh, it just really, really, really profoundly touched me and is what I needed. And now I know, like she's right there. She's right there. Um, and then secondly, that idea of connection came up in our group too. And I don't know if everybody can see the chat. I posted a Zoom link in there. And if you can't see it, I'll post it again. So some of us in the group said we wanted to get together between the structured meetings. So I just said, if we don't set it up now, I'm not going to get to it. So August 10th, 7 p.m., anybody wants to join us, they're welcome to come to the Zoom that I set up. And then from there, we could talk about the next time. We had a couple ideas that were thrown out. And if you can't make it, my email address is there and feel free to reach out to me too. So is everybody able to see that Zoom, or do I need to repost it?
Well, I think we can collect that Zoom at the end of the recording. However, you all have your all's emails. If you do a reply all to the email I sent you with the one I sent with the initial conversation about this program, your emails are all on that. So if you just do a reply all to that email, then you can send the link to everybody, Dawn, if you wanted to do
I'll
that.
do that. Thanks for reminding me.
This is Maureen. I'd like to mention that when the guides were sharing their inspiration, it was pretty evident that it was like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The inspiration, or you're being drawn to that thing that the inspiration provided? Because each of you embody that spirit of what it was that you talked about with your person. And I thought about that with Elaine, that Elaine is very practical and very connected on a kind of a quiet level, and not hitting you in the face with it, but that practical, and each of you, Wade and Gabe and Ron and Joanne, if we had to just guess who you might have picked, it might have been those people. I thought that was lovely. And then how is that for each of us? Can we look at each other and go, oh, I see what inspires you, whether you know it or not? It's just really fascinating.
Yeah. Maureen, thanks for noticing that. I was very aware of that also. And I want to say, I said this in my group, sharing your inspiration incarnation, that is to say, that which inspires you, is a very intimate thing to do, and it's very revelatory. Because, for example, if I were to say Mr. Trump is my inspiration, you would know something about me. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So who to say out loud who is your inspiration confirms what already is experienceable. It wasn't just a fun exercise to do this. We really are inviting each other to be revelatory about that which lures us spiritually and which becomes like a North Star for us. To see, it reveals us to each other, this incarnation inspiration.
And that revelatory quality, that vulnerability in that opens the door to connection. That's where we get connected, when we start showing ourselves to each other, expressing ourselves to each other. And that's what was so strong, as Dawn said, in our small group, is that sense of connection, and how much we hunger for that as human beings, and how much people find that in this environment here. Yeah, and want more of it, actually, and have taken a step to find it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do more work with the incarnation inspiration in November. So when we're all together, it'll be ceremony and some work like that. So we'll continue this conversation. Anything else you might want to add from your experience? Are you glad you came? So Elaine?
Yeah, as we were talking, I was just reminded, I think it was either Wayne Dyer or Ramdas. One of them said something of like, you should look at the universe as being your mirror, and anything you want to say to the universe, imagine the universe saying it back to you. And I feel like you can almost do that with these incarnation inspirations of ourselves. Like, oh, Evelyn, you are so wise. And her saying, Elaine, you are so wise. And to play with that, just have some fun. Or, or you're just too wordy. You're too wordy. Whatever. It may be, yeah, a fun thought. Very practical too.
I was thinking about how being in our small group, when people talk, it's like, boy, I just want to stay all day with you and hear more about what you're saying. And and it occurred to me that probably is true of most anyone I know. If you would really get into a small group and hear who most inspires them, what a interesting world it would be if we had more time for having this level of depth with people, even probably with our own family members, that we would have no idea who they might name, or maybe we do have an idea and it would be great if we were wrong, or something. So I was thinking about that too, how special it would be to do this with others.
And choosing a mystic to study, or I'm thinking now of you, Cindy, and how you keep bringing Mary Oliver to us. Uh, so choosing something to go deeper into, in terms of spiritual growth or spiritual deepening. So that's the intention, and you choose to go there. They are as much luring you as you are calling them forward. Like they're as interested in, now what will you make of this, as you are in learning more about them. So it's, you are because they are, and they are because you are. Who Mary Oliver is now is, in my own experience of you, Cindy, is woven in. I can't think of you without Mary Oliver. And if I think of Mary Oliver, I can't not think of you. Do you see? It's like that. So Hilda Gabe here, that's kind of how life goes on and multiplies and diversifies and enriches.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Because now Mary Oliver has become invisible inside of Cindy. Just like Rilke says, the earth wants to become invisible inside of us. That we know the earth so well, it lives within us. And each one of these mystics now lives more within me than they did before. And so they are alive and they're in me. It's great to get back to Evelyn Underhill again. And The Seven Story Mountain was an important book for me 40 years ago. How wonderful to circle back to that. And of course, Hildegard, wow, she is such a prophet. She is a prophet. I don't know, has anybody called her a prophet?
Well, yes, prophetessa. There's a huge mosaic in Eibingen, in the monastery that's still there. And there's a mosaic, and the mosaic is called Prophetessa of the Rhine.
Yeah. And how her music is becoming more and more popular now and is inspiring musicians to create pieces inspired by her. So she's so very much alive, invisibly, in so many of us. Ah.
So just to refine that sense of invisibility, invisible to the physical eye because it's spiritual does not mean it's insensible. Did you see?
Absolutely, yes.
So it's the making of something spiritual for ourselves. Earth is waiting to be made spiritual in us. Um, Hildegard is waiting to be made spiritual in me. That is to say, become part of my spirit and spiriting.
Yes, thank you.
It's the German word, which I can't come up with now, but I know the meaning of. It's tricky there. What it means is to become spirit.
Yeah, which I have to assume is what Rilke, since he wrote mostly in German, that's what he used.
Right.
Thank you.
I when I was an architect for a little while, I used to think I would define an architect as a medium through which the earth shapes itself. That was what I came up with, and nobody understood what I was saying. But I'm going to go with it here too, because I feel like, you know, we're tuning in and dialing up our mystical sensibilities, and we're looking into the lives of the mystics and their inspirations. And if you really think about it, they all they did was be super present with what's real, right? And picked up whatever creation was trying to move through them, and it became a particular expression. And somehow they brought it out into the world in such a way that we are still paying attention. And then to see what that's going to become in each of us, what particular expression will come through us, but to recognize that there's that original inspiration from the cosmos itself that's just sort of working its way through the human experience. And what a delight to be part of all of that.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad you brought the conversation back to Earth, because what we're talking about when we say spirit is not something that is inoculated onto the earth. In other words, oftentimes we have this idea that earth or matter is inert, and then it gets inoculated with spirit somehow. We have that idea. You know, somehow it gets implanted in me or it gets implanted in the earth, and now it's spiritual. Well, the truth is, it's there from the beginning. In other words, it was part of the initial creation of everything, spirit present. But to make it a live, living spirit requires our cooperation and our willingness to sense it. In other words, it's always there, but we don't notice it, and then suddenly we think it was inoculated in. But it's been there all the time, waiting for us to notice. See, holiness is always there, just waiting for us to notice and respond and pull it out and invite, like that. So to know that this is Earth counting on its two-leggeds to get the spiritual dimension of it. And, you know, every iteration of the human species, you know, pre-Homo sapiens through Homo sapiens, brought forward something of a spiritual activity. You see, that's the remarkable thing. It's like that's our contribution to creation, this capacity for engaging spirit and the recognition of it. That's how we matter. You know, we're the ones that do ceremony. We're the ones that inform each other and transgenetically, like through language and art, continue to develop spirit. Yeah, this is a big topic. I mean, you know, it's like, okay, uh, uh, to just let this reverberate. But it's like to really think what matters. So it's not, we don't get spiritual to get to heaven. I mean, I want to just say what the way we're thinking of it now is we already are living in spirit that we then begin to recognize. And any major tradition worth its salt will emphasize that. You know, we are here and now. The kingdom is here and now. Samadhi, nirvana, here and now. We're not here. Yeah, go ahead, Wade.
I can say I'll bring that down to earth and with Thomas Merton and how everything that exists is holy, and he took the photograph of a dented, empty paint can. You know, there it is. Look at that. Look at that. Just anything and everything can be seen in that holy light.
Yes. We have the creative capacity for that.
Mark has his hand up too.
Yeah, please, Mark.
Okay. If I could follow up what you said with a little something that maybe, I guess, we all knew anyway, but from a Buddhist perspective, we do not meditate to achieve an altered state. We meditate, hopefully, to lose the altered state that we're always in. and to ideally successfully shed the encumbrances and debris and injuries and such that encumber the eternally existing Buddha nature or Christ consciousness in each of us, always, eternally. And to access that, it's always there. It's always there, and it gets encumbered, covered up, lost to us through the debris of daily life and lifelong injuries. But it's just as you say, it's you know, it we're we are we're living in heaven all the time if we could only see it. Um, and it's always there. It's always present. You can't lose it. It's a matter of accessing it. Again, I'm not so good at this, but maybe that you get a sense that it's just a matter of putting oneself in that state where you can really, really achieve what you can never lose. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
If I could just add to what Mark said, one of my favorite quotes, and I will be paraphrasing it because I will make it about me only and not Meister Eckhart makes it about all of us, but I'm going to paraphrase it to make it only about me. And what he says is that the divine is at home, or he says God is at home. It is I who has gone out for a walk. And my goal, Mark, is just to kind of try to walk right back to where that divine is.
This is Maureen. I have a question around the whole concept of invisibility. When Ron was reading the things from the muse that affected Rilke, I thought of the Course in Miracles and how they talk about that everything around us is not real. Nothing is real. We've made it real by a group decision to make it real. And it felt to me like there was a relationship between that, which was a channeling reading, a relationship between that and that concept of invisibility. But I'm curious what, for those of you that have studied the Course of Miracles, if that made any sense to you. It's not ringing a bell.
I'm also curious about the invisibility aspect. Ron, do you understand that from that reading?
You're muted, Ron.
Now, there's the air show is happening now with all these military airplanes buzzing around. so, so, and, so I'd like to share the slide again where it expresses, where it talks about that, about us taking in the qualities of the earth. Well, and maybe if that would be okay to share that little explanation about it, because I've been chasing that for a long time too. And it's like, what does that mean? Is the earth going to disappear? And actually, in Arthur C. Clarke's book, it eventually does because the earth has all it's needed, what it's gotten what it's needed, and it disappears. Before that, all the humans disappear too.
Yeah. So Ron, track that because here's how it goes. Matter has a beginning and an ending. Everything that is matter or physical in its full experience begins and ends, begins and ends, begins and ends, begins and ends. So will there be an end to Earth? Absolutely. Will there be an end to the sun? Yes. Will there be an end to the galaxy? Yes. Will there be more galaxies? Yes. Do you see how that is? Right? So this planet that is our Genesis is inviting or waiting for us to have a sense of its spirit, because that is the everlasting. So, for example, to my dearest friend Florence, when she died, I lived with her for 25 years, and I did not know my Wheaton life, my Wheaton Franciscan life, without her. When she died, I was bereft. And what I had forgotten to do was to make her invisible. That is to say, you must understand invisible not meaning ending, but becoming spirit. That is to say, no longer matter, but still sensible and waiting to be mattered in our spiritual sensing of it. So she lives in me now, and I am filled with love because she loved me so. But that's not matter, that's spirit. She invisibly is alive in me. So she is invisibly mattering in me. And your spirit senses that spirit in me. You sense my aliveness. And I am alive because Florence lived, and now she lives in me. So Earth is waiting to do this in us. And particularly problematic because we think invisible is nothing. And so the first step is to get it invisible just means you can't see it with physical eyes.
Yeah. And of course, indigenous people have known this forever.
Truly,
And
truly,
we
truly.
have stepped away from that, but are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are the prodigal sons and daughters.
Yes. Yes. Well, that we came back to that part of Rilke. That's big. Thank you.
I was also wondering, for me, the invisibility, the way I can tap into that in the here and now while Earth is still here and we are here, is if we manage to attain the kind of oneness with the Earth, that there is no other. And in a sense, Earth becomes invisible because it is us and we are it.
Right. The otherness of it
The
disappears.
otherness disappears.
Mm-hmm. That's how poetry is. It always has multiple ways to come at this.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. So, unbeknownst to me, I also began with a slide that said that from the beginning, Earth was spirit waiting to be perceived, and that if we do spirituality is because it was present already, not knowing, Ron, that you would bring out the Rilke quote about Earth's invisibility. So I want to say in terms of the team, this was all fresh for us. We had not rehearsed together. We wanted to be as surprised and as fresh with you as you were receiving this from us, and we hope that it was useful. So I want to invite the checkout. So if we could just take some quiet, and maybe you want to write a line, just a pithy phrase or a word that you would offer in the voice of an incarnation inspiration. And if they have a name, go ahead and name them. If it's a word from the Buddha, or if it's a word from Thich Nhat Hanh, or if it's a word from Jesus, or from Hildegard, or from Evelyn Underhill, to say the name and then to speak the word. And that's how we'll do the checkout. So taking some quiet time. See what wants to be spoken. Now what? And it can be repeated if somebody else says the same thing. We need to hear it more than once. So what now? What wisdom now? And as you're ready, slowly wrapping up the meditation on what wants to be spoken, and prepare yourself to pay attention and to be delighted with what we might hear and to let it surprise us and catch us off guard and transform us. So what I'll do is I'll just name people as they are here on my screen, and so I'll be happy to begin. And then the next person on my screen is Mark, and then Dawn, and I'll keep naming one or two people out so that you know who's next. And of course, I'm going to speak in the voice of Hildegard and say this, that Hildegard in her play about the virtues has the Christ appear. And the very last line of the play about the virtues, the Christ, that is to say, the figure of full divinity, comes in full glory, marching down the aisle, and the Christ figure says this: "In every injury a bud, in every wound a jewel." And so this is earth mattering. In every injury, a bud, and in every wound, a jewel, so that we keep making and mattering our life. In every injury, a bud, in every wound, a jewel. Next person is Mark, and then Dawn.
Concerning a person who has died, not gone, now just in a different form.
Thank you. John, and then Wade.
When my father died of suicide, Sister Diane reminded me, you were not your father's savior.
Thank you. Wade, then Joanne.
When I used to hang around with people making lots of video, my old friend Stan, who is now gone, would sometimes remind us when we wanted to hide out, we wanted to appear different than we are, something like that. He said, "The camera is always rolling. You can't escape it, folks. You're showing."
Thanks, Wade. Joanne, and then Heidi.
From Rumi, I, you, he, she, we. In the garden of mystic lovers, these are not true distinctions.
Ah, thank you. Thank you. Heidi, and then Cindy.
From many voices, all is in divine order.
Thank you. Cindy, and then Sharon.
From the end of Mary Oliver's poem this morning, where she goes into detail about baby birds and what they don't know and what they will become, she ends it with, "And just like that, like a simple neighborhood event, a miracle is taking place." It speaks to the divine and the holy in the mundane that we just have to notice.
Thank you. Sharon, and then Cindy Schick.
These are words from Thomas Merton in his book, Seeds of Contemplation. A tree gives glory to God by being a tree. By being a tree, it imitates an idea that is in the mind of God and not separate from God.
Thank you. Cindy Schick, and then Maureen. You're muted, Cindy.
Oh, my dad passed in December, and so often I've called upon him, but all he ever said was, everything will be okay. And it's such a simple thing, but it really is truth because nothing lasts. Everything changes, everything comes, everything has its lifetime. So I just keep saying, I say that to myself a lot. Everything will be okay. And it brings such calm.
Thank you. Thank you. Maureen and then Jenny.
From my father and from mine read Craighead. What to do next? That's which is in front of you. The trick is being able to discern where the front is. So turn, turn, turn.
Thank you, Maureen. Jenny and then Ron.
I have a Rumi quote about out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there.
We'll meet you there, Jenny. Thank you. Ron and then Elaine.
Sometimes I go about with pity for myself, and all the while great winds are carrying me across the sky. Ashanabi saying.
Elaine and then Sheila Nolte.
Evelyn Underhill says, the business and method of mysticism is love.
Thich Nhat Hanh, we are of the earth. It speaks to everything we eat becomes a part of us. Everything we breathe in, we hear, water we drink, and what we touch.
Thank you, Sheila. Gay and then Valerie.
This came through from my grandfather this afternoon. His name was Arthur Norland, and he said, remember, life is fleeting. Though we don't have much time together in person, our impact on one another is long.
Thank you. Valerie, then Michelle and Jeff.
And this is Rumi. Love is the bridge between you and everything.
Michelle and Jeff, and then Diane.
Rely on the words, imagery, and practices of wisdom beings, and allow time and space for your own words, imagery, and practices to come forth. Trust in this too for the benefit of yourself and others.
Thank you. Jeff and then Diane.
This is a little bit complicated to set up, but it's told to be by my cousin, whose mother said it to her, and her mother is the one that came to me. So my cousin that told me the story had just had her baby, and the baby was born before she was married. And her mother Ivory said, what are you and Brad going to do? This before the baby was born. And Chrissy said, well, we love each other. We're going to get married. And Ivory said, you don't know what love is. Wait till you hold that baby in your arms. Then you'll know what love is. Chrissy said she was right. And Brad and Chrissy are still married 30 years later. More than one thing can be true, but Ivory always spoke the truth.
Thank you. Diane and then Susan.
The Buddha said, the person who thinks they are wise is a fool. Person who knows they are a fool is indeed wise.
Thank you. Susan and then Kate.
Jung said, the greatest burden a child can bear is the unlived life of the parent. And I approached this as the child in trying to identify the burden and then letting it go.
Thank you. Kate and then Meg.
It was Mother Earth who came to me today. So the quote I have is Ralph Waldo Emerson. The earth laughs in flowers.
Thank you. Meg and then Leo.
In the words of Paul Hart, see nexus, look for it in the simplest of things, and feel the woven connectedness.
Thank you. Leo and then Deb Murray.
This is from Rumi. The garden of the world has no limits except in your mind.
Thank you. Deb and then Janet.
From Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, that angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of an infinite glory.
Thank you. Janet and then Liz.
From Thich Nhat Hanh, you have arrived.
Liz and then Sheila.
Joanne Macy, eco-philosopher, and as I learned today, translator of Rilke. You are not a separate being. You belong to the living body of Earth. You are the Earth. Looking up at the stars, you are the Earth becoming conscious of itself.
Thank you. Sheila and then Christina.
I'm at a hermitage right now, and this is the book I picked up by Catherine DeHook Doherty. Never read her stuff. She talks about going into the silence to listen to God, and she says the first act is to fold the wings of the intellect and open the doors of the heart. The Russians would say, put your head into your heart and try to achieve the deep and profound interior silence. It is then, when one is deeply silent, that God begins to speak.
Thank you. Christina and then Dawn.
Father Fabian, a professor at my college campus, said, every day, every class, good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good becomes better and the better becomes best. Why? Because the human heart and the human mind were made for the best and will never truly be at rest until they get the best. So hit your wagon to a star and aim high.
Thank you, Christina. Dawn and then Cheryl. And then Lisa, you'll have the last word.
So this is from Spirit Wheel by Stephen Charleston. Be the peace in which you live each day.
Thank you. Cheryl.
Merton. Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves. Hildegard, get to it.
Thank you. Lisa.
This is Black Elk, and he said, the Holy Land is everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful basket of wisdom to hold until we're together again in September. Let's take a bow to one another. So, Ron, before we leave, say a few words about September.
It's the journey into heartfulness and living not only with the heart, but within the heart, and practices that enable that or that help us do that. So the wisdom of the heart is the universal wisdom. And I found it quite profound over the years. And it's an honor and a duty to share with this select company of I consider us pilgrim saints. I look upon the screen and I see a stained glass window filled with pilgrim saints. And we are companions along the way. And I grow every time we are together. So we'll take a deep journey into heartfulness embodied in the here and the now.
Thanks, Ron. And just to add a footnote, the work that Ron will be offering is grounded in some of the practices that Ron and I have experienced. And I think you, Wade, have also been with us with Robert Sardello. And I will be sending you a link to his website so you can kind of snoop around and get a feel for how he writes. He's a phenomenologist, so he's interested in experience. He's not interested in theory. So what's your experience? As we've been pushing also for staying embodied and mattering through our experience. So you can do some exploration. We'll send that out. Is there anything else that needs to be said to each other before we finish our circle time together? So it looks like we've come to completion. How good, how good. And the sun is shining here. I'm in dry clothes, all is well. And what I'd like to do is just offer you a slide image from Hildegard. So here is our two shots from the movie Vision. Hildegard wrote the first opera. Let me say that again, opera, really, not Italian, German, the very first opera, and it's about the journey of the soul and how the soul is beguiled along its journey and pulled away from its original goal. And then the virtues come and help her. And so here, this is the image of the woman in the center is the one who plays the soul, and the figures around her come to help her on her journey. It's like a little sangha. Now, in this, let me just go back. In this opera, what Hildegard is speaking of is a sensory upgrade. She wants the soul to really learn how to sense soul, not be so busy about the physical, the emotional, or the intellectual, but to sense soul. And what the soul begins to realize is that the devil, or that is to say, the things that do not matter and are illusory, she's able to stand up to them. And in the play, it's lovely. There is one male voice in the play, and he is the only voice that does not sing. Why? Because everything else is in harmony with God. So when we sing, we are harmonious, and to not be able to sing means not to be in harmony. Anyway, there's this great confrontation. They tie him up, and then come those wonderful words, the warrior of truth that I quoted. But I wanted to show you this image. This is an incredible image in the Hildegard Healing Center in Eibingen. So the warrior of truth, that is to say, the Christ speaks. Know the divinity of my jewel-covered body intimately. So I say to you, let us know the divinity of our jewel-covered bodies, a gem in each injury, and in each injury a bud. And let me do the close-up so that you can see it again. And I want to leave this image with you of how in the invisible everything blossoms and is precious and bejeweled. So the jewels that we've received from each other in this day that we've shared, thank you for the buds that have begun to open in the jewels and in the fresh sprouts of this day. Who was it that oh, Wade, you did. You spoke about the winding and the climbing vine and the grasping for life and the new. So here we are. Thank you. Open your mics. Let's hear each other offer our goodbyes and blessings.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Nice
great
to
day.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Gabe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Love.
Thank you, Steph. Bye-bye.